welcome to this week's Active Travel Cafe, and we will start this week with our usual roundup of news. So if anyone's got any items to share, if you start mulling those over now. But introducing our speakers who we'll hear from later this week, I'm really excited actually this week. We're hearing from not one but two commissioners. We've got Matt MacDonald, who's the Road Safety Commissioner for West Midlands, alongside Beccy Marston, who's the Active Travel Commissioner, and they've been in post since the election of the new Mayor, Richard Parker. So, but before we hear from them, we'll start with our roundup of news. So if anyone has any items they'd like to share, please do put your hand up now, and let's hear from you. I'm not seeing any hands up. Maybe we haven't got any news this week. Adam, can you see any?
I can't see a thing. Yeah, I don't have any news either.
Okay.
One of those quiet.
Maybe just got such two brilliant speakers this week that people just want to get straight into the speakers, which is fine. And perhaps things will crop up as we go along, and people can put them in the chat as they go. Oh, Tim, you've got one. No need for there to be any news if there isn't any news, but Tim.
Not so much news, but a question. I got a notice saying Active Travel Local Authority Toolkit. This guidance was withdrawn on the 15th of May 2025 from the government. I just wondered if anybody else had picked that up or knew what it was about and why it's gone.
Any offers from anyone? You can always post in the chat. If you put the title of that in the chat, Tim, we can see. Right, okay, well I'm going to move straight into the speakers, and perhaps if people have got snippets of things to share from where they are, then they can do that in the chat. So without further ado, Beccy, I think you're going to open this speaker section up. So Beccy, over to you.
Thanks ever so much, Claire. Just a sound check. Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up. Brilliant. Okay, let me attempt to share a screen and we can get going. Just is Matt on the call now?
Not that I can see.
Matt's just, I'm speaking to him over text, so I'm sure he's winging his way in at the minute. Can everyone see my screen now?
That's brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. Right, let me give him a little nudge and then I'll kick off. So I'm not able to see any questions coming in. So if you do have any, Claire's going to kindly corral them and then shout out at an appropriate moment or at the end. So we'll pick those up as we go. So great to join the Active Travel Cafe. I've been a regular visitor with yourselves now and again throughout my career. It's a great forum for connecting with people and sharing best practice and news, and just to have a good old discussion with like-minded people that are also passionate about this topic. So my name is Beccy Marston. I'm the Active Travel Commissioner for the West Midlands. So I work for my Mayor Richard Parker, and my job is basically to convene different departments across the combined authority and local authorities, and look strategically about how we increase access to active travel. We're in role 1 day a week, is a voluntary post. So myself and Matt also have day jobs that we do on the side of this as well. Has Matt been able to join us now?
I'm looking out for him. If he does join, I will actually shout. If that helps.
Okay, cool. Brilliant. So I'm sure Matt won't mind me saying as well, he is 1 day a week, and he has a job as a doctor in the NHS, so he works across hospitals across the West Midlands alongside his work. And I do cycling consultancy, so support local authorities with cycling projects that they're delivering as well. So bear with us if you do reach out, because obviously our time is quite restricted and limited, but happy to chat and connect with anyone on the
As
network.
Matthew MacDonald, then he has
Yeah,
joined.
that's it. Yeah.
He's joined.
Sorry, guys.
There he is. Hi, Matt. I
Hi.
just done a little intro to us, and I think we're ready to kick off the slides.
Oops.
Just trying to get my screen to load.
We're on slide 1, which has got your title slide, and then
Brilliant.
we've moved on now.
Right, is that they've moved on? Brilliant. Okay, great stuff. Okay, so I just wanted to open up by saying some of the challenges we face in the West Midlands. They're quite similar to what everyone else is experiencing in their areas. We've got a humongous amount of short trips under 3 miles, 502 million a year being made in cars. So there's absolutely work that must be done to reduce those number of trips. We've got really significant levels of physical inactivity. 27% of our adults are not engaging in any physical activity at all. We have issues with personal safety, crime, racism, and harassment on our system. There's huge inequality barriers. Not everyone can afford access to a bike. E-bikes are completely unaffordable for many of our communities. And of course, adaptive bikes, the cost of them and the access on our network is a massive barrier for people. In terms of road safety, we do a lot of work in perception and surveying our communities to measure the work that we're doing and how that changes year on year. And we know 50% are dissatisfied with the speed of cars. So that's something we desperately need to tackle. But 40% want action on pavement parking. So we've got appetite from our local communities to do something about road safety. So it's unlocking the mechanisms and the avenues to do that. Road danger is a massive barrier for active travel. And annually it's costing us £444 million with collisions in our region. So a massive economic barrier in terms of collisions happening on our network. So we desperately need to reduce that, and in turn that will help us to promote and make people feel safer to use our network in different ways. Infrastructure, we don't have enough cycle paths and safe places to cross. There's still parts of the West Midlands where kids can't get to school because there is no safe crossing for them to be able to get to school. So parents are faced with this horrible dilemma of having to put the kids in the car even though they really don't want to. Deprivation, we have really high levels. There's problems with social mobility, and obviously that restricts our communities from accessing opportunities. And we have quite poor health outcomes as well. So these all act as challenges in our region. I'm sure we're not the only region to say, but we have this tendency to silo interventions where great work's happening, but it's in pockets, or it's not collaborative, or it doesn't reach its full effect because it's not done in partnership. And then, of course, the age-old issue with local authority work. Governance is very slow. There's often delays in funding, with procurement, with contracting, and that is something that we're trying to unlock. So I'll just hand over to Matt, who's going to cover the next slide.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Becky. And apologies for joining late, guys. I had some connection issues, but I've managed to position myself as the good news guy now. Becky's set out all the problems, so there was a certain tactical benefit to it, I guess. I'm going to start with Becky being probably the greatest asset that I have personally in my role. We're very much the Ant and Dec of road safety and active travel these days. We tend to come as a pair. We work very closely together, and it's been a real privilege to learn from her experience in terms of everything she's brought to the role, and to have a partner in crime in battling the various obstacles that she's laid out so eloquently in the last slide. We do also have the firm backing of Richard Parker in everything that we are trying to achieve for the region. Despite the problems that Beccy's talked about in terms of governance and in terms of process, Richard does very much get it, and he does very much appreciate that what we're trying to do is not simply about reducing the number of people who are killed and seriously injured, is not simply about getting more people on bikes. It's about transforming communities for the better. It's about realizing the full potential of our region. It's about creating a place where people will want to make their lives, will want to raise families, will want to start businesses, and engender all the material and personal prosperity that comes with that. So it is good to have his backing. It's good to work with Beccy. We work across seven different local authorities, and as you might expect, they have differing versions of what they'd like to see in terms of the outcomes that we're pushing for. In Birmingham, there's been some really good strategies and intentions that have been codified into various documents, incorporating, for instance, the Healthy Streets model, and allocating some of the funding that they have raised through the Clean Air Zone levy, which was established a few years ago, to deliver some of those changes as well. We have also very proactive local authority in Coventry who are very good at taking opportunities and spending money. I think of all the local authorities, they actually spend the most in terms of active travel funding that comes from the CA, just because they are the quickest off the mark in terms of getting proposals together and delivering things over the line. So a lot to learn from them in terms of process. We obviously have this new tranche of active travel funding, and in addition, the old funding model, which was the CRSTS model. I won't attempt to say what the acronym is, because invariably I get at least one letter wrong. But the old model of funding has now been superseded by something called the Integrated Settlement Formula, which essentially is central government devolving more responsibility and more oversight of the funds that it gives to the regions, to those centres. It comes with a lot of opportunities, and it also comes with some uncertainty as to how exactly it gets spent. And Beccy and I are trying to kind of work our way through that, and get things out the door and get things delivered. So we also, within the broader national context, of course, we have this imminent road safety strategy from the national government. And, it's been really interesting to see how that's evolving and to have the opportunity to feed into it. I wait with bated breath to see quite how politically bold the government are going to be with this, because the sense I get is they're very much still in the trenches of this perceived culture war against drivers, and it's been quite hard to coax them out of that. We have some fantastic local MPs. Sarah Coombs in particular is worthy of special mention. She's done some phenomenal work raising the issue of ghost plates, and campaigning for her constituents in Sandwell more generally. So yeah, and of course, we have phenomenal campaign organisations, and we have phenomenal third-party support, and Beccy and I are really both focused on trying to bring as much of that energy to the table as possible to circumvent and push through some of the kind of dry technocratic things that need to happen in order to make change, so that people are there making a very impassioned and visionary case for a better future that will hopefully inspire some greater action from our Mandarin colleagues in getting it done. So lots of opportunities, and lots of hard work going on to make the most of them. Beccy, I'll hand back to you. Sorry.
Yeah, so Matt and I came into the role start of February. And to put that into context, because we are only 1 day a week, we've probably been there about 4-5 months now, if you add that up prorated. But what we have done is quite an in-depth review of current processes and policy within the combined authority, and how that works with our local authority partners. And we've looked for where the quick wins are, where the barriers are, and where we want to make the most impact. And we've come up with 5 joint priorities, and that we're working really closely on. And just to say, it's really helpful for me to have Matt in this role, because I sometimes worry that other commissioners get pulled into the road safety debate and agenda quite a lot. And it is helpful to split that out, because the road danger is an issue for not just people that are travelling actively, but it is for anyone trying to get from A to B. And so to have Matt, who can work really closely with our police force and our police and crime commissioner, actually he's dealing with this must change now, and that allows me time to focus on what we're doing in terms of infrastructure and behaviour change, and how do we activate that, rather than telling people you need to go out on the roads and use pavements with the infrastructure that's currently there. We can't build it quick enough to enable people to make every trip active. But what we can do is try and support them on the current infrastructure we've got. But without having Matt by my side to be able to tackle the other issues, I think that's really important boost that we've got in the West Midlands. So our number one priority is Kids Streets. I'll talk about the joint mayoral commitment to active travel infrastructure and this idea that children should have the ability to travel independently to school. There's so much more opportunity for young people if they have the skills, the infrastructure and the safe places to be able to make those trips themselves. So Kids Streets, I'll talk a bit more about that approach and how we want to deliver that. Matt will cover that on the next slide. Our second priority is data capture. We want to bring all of the different data capture methods together. Local authorities have got their own systems. We've got our own systems at Transport for West Midlands, making sure we're leaning into the use of AI, for example, and using all the tools available with us, not just to capture data and monitor, but actually to use it as an evidence base to guide how we allocate resources. So it might not necessarily be an even split across local authorities. Actually, it should be where the most need is. So who has the most dangerous roads, who has the poorest infrastructure, where are the areas of the most deprivation, and how can we align our resources and really prioritise them cleverly with the data, rather than it just being a scattergun approach or the loudest councillor in that ward. We really want to have some evidence to back up why we're prioritising certain things. We're working towards having a coherent, connected, safe co-design cycle walk and wheel network. So instead of building infrastructure where there's the most space and least resistance, actually we should be leaning into our communities and asking them, where are the trips that could get you out of your car? The majority of small trips that are made are actually caring responsibilities in neighbourhoods. It's not the A to B commute to major town centres anymore, especially with more working from home. So how do we get more savvy on creating those connections in local areas? And walking is a massive win for us. If we can improve the walking infrastructure, the phasing on crossings, put more crossings in, actually we can have more wins with walking over the bigger infrastructure cycling projects. We're looking at ways to incorporate active travel and road safety policies across all of the mayoral priorities. So I spend a lot of my time working in other departments in the Combined Authority, looking at the new spatial development plans. How have they allowed for active travel in those? Our skills and economic department, are we providing skills training for people to enter, not just travel planning or engineering, but actually supporting people to become cycle instructors and mechanics, so that when we hopefully increase the number of people that are riding bikes, actually have we got enough workforce to be able to service that? And the mayor's massive priority is growth. Actually, if we can support people into cycling, walking and integrating public transport, we can connect far more people to job opportunities and capturing people at points of transition in their life. So if we've just commissioned new housing stock, are we thinking about from day one in the planning, what does the active travel infrastructure look like? Where are the jobs? How can we connect that so people have got a natural choice to actively travel to those opportunities? So I do a lot of work with property developers looking at planning applications. How can we make sure our policies are not just a tick box on a planning app, but actually comes to fruition and provides really useful connections for people. And then our number one goal is speeding up delivery. There is so much red tape and governance. We're looking at learning from other local authorities that are doing things quicker. How can we use them as best practice and use that within our combined authority to say, look, they're doing this here, we should be doing this, and this should speed things up. Matt, do you want to jump into?
Yeah, that's great. Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. So this slide is something Becky and I go around touting as often as we can, usually to officers and local authority politicians and the like. And essentially, what it's saying fundamentally is that there is a enormous overlap between our objectives as commissioners. You cannot have safe roads without making car-free journeys more accessible to people. And you cannot make car-free journeys more accessible to people without having safe roads. But not only that, as Becky's alluded to in terms of growth, and as I've alluded to earlier, this is, the benefits of delivering safer streets and more access to sustainable travel go well beyond the remit of transport specifically, and deliver all kinds of other benefits. So we've summarised our overlapping objectives in these three kind of domains in terms of the road harm reduction, in terms of streets that feel like places that you'd want to spend time, the healthy streets model for our communities, and also the process of modal shift, encouraging people to take more journeys in whatever car-free way that they can by improving their access to it. 60% of journeys under 2 miles are still taken by car in our region, so we've got an awful long way to go in that regard. But in all these three areas evidently intersect and evidently deliver all kinds of other benefits in terms of public health, societal well-being and prosperity as well. So there's obviously huge amounts of overlap between these areas, and that's why we've summarized it in a Venn diagram. Right in the middle of it is the project that Becky alluded to in the last slide, and that's Kids Streets. And for us, this is our flagship joint intention in terms of what we want to do for the region. It's something we've been fighting very hard for, and we've been quagmired in a lot of bureaucratic mud over it, but we are determined to keep pushing on with it and get the funding to make it work. And essentially what it is this: it is infrastructure based, people first spaces outside schools. It's inspired by what they've done in Paris, where they've transformed hundreds of streets outside schools into people first spaces, that can be either car free, fully pedestrianised, or car light in terms of the fact that the vehicular access is permitted under certain circumstances. But the thread which joins them together is these are infrastructural changes that augment not only the safety of the area outside of the school, which is obviously critical in terms of protecting our children from the dangers that road traffic presents, but is also a process whereby desirable civic spaces are created outside schools, which can be a source of pride and civic ownership, not only for the children who attend the school, but for the community themselves, who have a space where they can gather, where their own children can be safe, and where neighbours can truly connect with one another, because the threat of that through traffic has been removed or mitigated so much that it becomes tenable to use the space in an altogether different way. So what we want to see in the Kids Street project is essentially has these infrastructure-based changes outside school streets as the jewel in its crown. And more broadly, it's about starting conversations with communities about what changes they would like to see to make sustainable transport more accessible to them, to make their journeys safer, and to make their communities more pleasant places to exist and get around. So we are aiming to use the fantastic work that third-party organisations have been doing, people like Living Streets, people like Sustrans, who do so much incredible work engaging with communities, co-designing spaces and so on. We want to use some of that energy, commission that work, to have really honest conversations with communities about the issues they face and develop packages of interventions that are going to meet some of those issues head on, and make their journeys safer, and sustainable transport more accessible, and ultimately their communities feel like better places to be. So that's why it sits at the intersection of all these three themes in terms of the priorities that we have. Beccy, I'll hand back to you.
So we just wanted to give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what we've been up to since we came into post. Matt and myself ran a successful regional Active Travel Ambition conference. Oh gosh, was it May time we did that? So a way of engaging all of our local officers, local authorities, councils, public health teams. We had people from housing and planning there, starting to really open up the conversation. And of course, all of our third sector partners. So some of the charities that Matt's just mentioned, some of our campaign organisations. And it was really important for us to bring a wealth of people around the table, not just people from Active Travel. But that started the conversation around how do we better collaborate? How do we complement the infrastructure changes with the behaviour change interventions? What are we already doing that's good, but we just don't talk to each other, or we don't know what's happening? Really start that conversation on collaboration. And out of that conference, myself and Matt convened the first Kid Streets working group. So we held a big session. What great things have we got? What things are rubbish? Now let's form a group that tries to tackle some of these issues that we've identified. And it was really important to us that some tangible action came from that conference. And then we can look 12 months down the line, actually, what have we achieved in the last 12 months? So that Kid Street working group has had its first meeting. We're now working up an idea of what the concept would look like, what it would cost to deliver, what kind of reach we want from that. We've also convening, as of next week, a regional bikeability group. So looking at a growth plan of how we deliver more bikeability to more children across our region. And we've embedded some targets within our road safety plan to try and achieve that as well. We're convening an accessible cycling group. So the provision for adapted cycling in the region is quite sporadic. There's lots of places with no provision. There's some smaller charities getting smaller pots of money to deliver stuff. So really mapping the landscape, what is there out there for people, and having some future plan and strategy around that, to make sure that provision doesn't pop up and leave, and then we leave people with no access to adapted bikes. And then myself and Matt sit on the mayoral's transport task force, and there's 2 working groups as part of that. One of them which is looking at pavement parking and how we could run some pilots and trials to address that in our region. So I've been working heavily to align active travel investments with the Sport England investments that are happening in the region. So my background, I have come from sort of Sport England investment delivery. So it's really important for me to align those 2 investments. So if Sport England are already investing in people and place, we should be looking at the active travel in that place as well. Getting people to walk or cycle is the easiest form of introductory physical activity, and it will open opportunities to more activity and more things that people can access. So our active partnerships are really on board with that. We are just about to employ the very first active travel officer funded by Sport England that will sit within Black Country Transport. I'm not aware of that happening previously, but that just cements our ambition to align these 2 investment portfolios and make sure we maximise the benefit from those. We've just released our tender for re-awarding our cycle hire and e-scooter hire provider. So that will be the new contract that comes into force the 1st of April next year. And I've made sure that that has a very heavy focus on community, complementing our bikeability delivery, making sure there's doctor bike provision for communities alongside delivering the contract. So how can we maximise our behaviour change with other assets and investments we've got within the region? I'm supporting local authorities with putting forward a nice big pipeline of schemes so that we can speed things up when money comes through. And we've just commissioned the review of our LC whip as well. Is that still fit for purpose? Does it complement the local authority plans? And how can we really make the best of that? I've had small successes in unlocking funding with our skills and economy department. So in the future, there will be a pot available for people to qualify as mechanics and cycling instructors, so that we can funnel people into cycling careers and really resource this work that we've coming down the pipeline to mobilise this behaviour change. We're aligning public transport investments. So with the large metro extension we're having, the sports quarter and the new Knights Head venue, when the metro gets extended out there, we're looking at how provisions for active travel are aligned with that as well. So it's really important for us that if we're digging up the road, we make the most of the investment that and the disruption that causes. Actually, it's the perfect time for us to improve the crossing points and the cycle infrastructure in that area at the same time. Policy influence, I think I've mentioned that, but working across different departments, looking at the Mayor's plan for growth and housing, and making sure active travel is in and considered in all of those policies, and actually we see some action start to happen out the back of that. And then where Mayor Parker signed the England mayoral pledge to provide this connected network of cycle infrastructure and address this issue of kids travel. Keen to support children to be able to travel to school more independently, and that that frees up parents. It takes cars off the roads. And it provides far greater independence for our children. Back to you, Matt.
Thank you. So yeah, in addition to the big project ticket of Kids Streets and the endless quest to find an actual kind of funding stream that we can tap into and really get things moving, my roles involved a lot of joining the dots essentially behind the scenes. So I get a lot of emails from people with particular concerns in their area, sometimes about flooded roads, sometimes about particular hotspots. In a couple of cases about areas where there has been a fatality or a serious injury. And it's been good to have the powers that I have in this role to convene the right people around a table to discuss it, or to put people in touch with the relevant officers in highways teams, in parking teams, and so on, to sort of progress those issues in the right way with the relevant local authority. There's been a particularly sad example of this more recently across the M5 in Quinton. There was a death by suicide jumping off one of the motorway bridges that has become a bit of a hotspot for people who are feeling very down and trying to end their own lives. There's been 2 or 3 unsuccessful attempts, in addition to one attempt that was very sadly successful and involved a collision with 2 HGVs on the motorway itself. So in order to address that, I've been able to convene the right teams from Public Health, Birmingham City Council, together with the highways team, together with the police, to see what we can do in terms of engineering solutions to the bridges themselves, but also in terms of supporting the community, who are obviously deeply devastated and traumatized by what's happened in that instance. And again, more specifically, nearer to home, and I do have a bit of a vested interest in this because it's hopefully something that prevents my children being put in harm's way when they cycle around their own streets. I've been cajoling Birmingham City Council towards completing a very long overdue safety scheme in the Kings Heath Moseley area of the city. which was a low traffic neighborhood, although, we're not allowed to say those words anymore, are we? But it's a low traffic neighborhood, and it's the second phase that was supposed to have been delivered back in 2021 and still hasn't been effected. So I've been able to use some influence to cajole behind the scenes to get things moving on that front, and also to engage with the local councillors, with the local community, which has been a really helpful exercise in taking some of the heat out of the debate and hopefully preventing some people disappearing down a Facebook rabbit hole of vitriolic nonsense, and just having a slightly more civil tone to the conversation around the issue than there perhaps was a few years ago when the first set of bollards went in. So it's been a very useful role in that regard, to spin plates here and there, behind the scenes to connect things. More broadly across the region, we've had some success in terms of reaching an agreement on how speed enforcement and red light enforcement are going to work. So back in April, we signed the joint working agreement together with West Midlands Police and the 7 local authorities, which basically sets out the terms for how camera resources are funded, who owns them, who maintains them, and how many offences the police will be processing as a result of new cameras that are going in. So all the local authorities are planning to enhance their active speed enforcement provision. To some extent, Birmingham have proposed 6 cameras, and have said potentially 4 could be delivered by the end of the year. Again, I will believe it when I see it. But it has been a really useful step forward, and the police have actually massively increased the number of speeding offences that they are prosecuting through the average speed enforcement network. What we've shown in some studies that we've done as well across the region is that the placement of average speed enforcement cameras reduces the risk of a serious collision by as much as 35 to 36%, where we've looked at the data. So these are quite significant impacts that this will have on collisions and ultimately on people being seriously injured or killed as well. As part of that, we are also looking to roll out the first red light cameras that our region has had for many, many years. Birmingham have identified their own sites with this, but we are also going to be funding from the combined authority a few more pilot sites where red light enforcement can be trialled. We're particularly looking at what we call speed on green cameras, which seem to have the most evidence behind them in terms of their efficacy, that not only capture people going through red, but also act as speed cameras, in the sort of old school Gatso way, where they capture a static point of speeding through the light, if somebody decides to jump it, or indeed if they speed through it on green as well. So those cameras have the most evidence behind them, and we're currently looking into procurement as to how we can get hold of them, and also coming up with a sort of long list of different sites across the region, which we're then going to cross-match with crash map data, and check with our policing partners in terms of the viability of the sites that are being proposed. So hopefully in the coming months we will be rolling out those cameras as well, and hopefully they will be having a very positive impact on the safety of the crossings where they're installed, as well as in fact other crossings across the region, because there's a certain degree of uncertainty when cameras start going up that tends to improve behaviour across the board, as well as just at the sites where they're installed. Various other bits on this rather busy slide, I do apologise. Beccy and I as Beccy mentioned, we're looking to embed active travel and road safety into money that's being spent on trams, because huge amounts of money are going to be spent on trams. So we're hopeful that, by latching onto that and taking the opportunity, as Beccy's outlined, when roads are dug up, to put them back together in the best possible way, and in a way that maximises the access that people have to sustainable transport, will be the best possible thing that we can do to make sure those principles are embedded into these really big changes that are coming further down the line over a course of years rather than months. And also, we're looking at developing evidence-based guidance for how we spend money on road safety infrastructure. So currently working with Agilicis on essentially asking them to produce some evidence-based guidance on junctions specifically, which are hotspots for collisions, so that we can essentially establish a protocolized bit of guidance on what junctions should look like that we can then use as an audit tool for the junctions across the region, and a funding tool to improve those junctions, almost like a scoring matrix similar to what you have in Healthy Streets, so that we can measure where we are and then improve on that number going forward. And excitingly, next year we will be hosting a conference. It was the 20 Plenty Action Vision Zero conference, and we're just going to expand that essentially to incorporate not only people who are activists who work in the active travel sphere and people who work in the road safety sphere, but also urbanism more generally, to create a kind of positive vision of what our streets could look like with all the interventions that we would all like to see on them. So we're trying to bring together and bridge the divide and find that substantial common ground that exists between our different special interests in terms of active travel, in terms of road safety, and in terms of planning for a brighter future. So particularly if anyone's interested in participating in that, or joining it, or helping to plan it, please feel free to give me a shout about that at any point. I will include my email address at the end. And I'll give back to Beccy now for the next slide.
We've got loads of questions for you guys, so I'm hoping we can maybe move into. I don't know how many more slides you've got, Beccy.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just a couple.
No, just we can send these out. They're just links to stuff that we've been up to, but just some really great. I get to do all the fun things, and Matt has to do the really depressing things, sadly. So this is where we switch around. So this year we ran a kiddie call mass in Wolverhampton, and just to say, the mayor is super behind everything that we do. They came out and helped me shepherd a school street in Birmingham. We got bikes in the Pride Parade in Birmingham for the first time ever this year. So it wasn't just a bus from Transport for West Midlands. We had bikes riding at the front of the bus, which I was really, really proud of. Working with community partners to help on new cycle infrastructure. Advocating heavily for e-bikes, because I'm really passionate about the power of e-bikes and the rhetoric around them being dangerous. And, you know, I hate the media spin on illegal motorbikes, which is what the bad press should be around, and nothing to do with e-bikes. And then things like organising International Women's Day walk. So we want to be visible in the communities. These are the people that we work with and people we support. So just a few of the snippets of the stuff that I've been up to, similarly for Matt, and then we'll wrap up. Oh, Matt, have you frozen?
No, I haven't. Can I have the next slide?
Has that not switched?
No, you're basking in your glory, Beccy.
No, it's stuck on your slide.
That's all right. Don't worry. Yeah, we can wrap up. It's fine if you need to crack on. That's fine.
Does that come on?
It's just some more photos, but mine aren't as fun as Becky's.
Oh.
It's more that I think the questions will.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll have plenty of time, because you've given us a really candid update. Oh, there you go. There you go, Matt.
Oh, sure. Okay, so clockwise. This was a project using AI tech in our Viva City cameras on a dangerous junction in Coventry. It records near miss data essentially, and then following that there was money made available to narrow the junction mouth and install a pedestrian refuge. It reduced the number of near misses by 88.9%. So there's a really substantial bit of evidence behind this work, and that's something that we want to carry forward and use to guide our practice. Various bits of media stuff that we've come out talking about. There was a road safety emergency declared in Birmingham a year ago, and quite rightly we were put on the spot when it was an annual anniversary of that, in order to answer questions about it. And now all my pictures have disappeared, so that's fine. We'll crack on with the questions.
Great.
I'm getting the hint, guys. I'm getting the hint.
No, it's like I said, it's only because I think we've got some really good questions. So thank you so much, both of you. There's quite a lot of questions in the Q&A which I'll pick through and put them to you. But I think my first one, because it's cropped up in a couple, could you just clarify the status, if you like, of the roles? Because I think some people have called them voluntary. You talked about 1 day a week, and there's a question about, why. So could you just clarify kind of what is the status of the roles and any context you want to add to that?
Sure.
Yeah, Matt, do you want
I don't
to? I don't mind. I'll take that one then. Yes, so we are volunteers, but we are paid for our time. I think it was a way of making resource go further, but also ensuring you got candidates that were really passionate about this and weren't just doing it as a career stepping stone. Or, I'm not a politician. I'm not in it for fame and glory. I'm in it because I really believe that these roles have an influence and an ability to affect things that we've seen that need to change. I've worked in active travel for the last 18 years now, and it's always been frustrating that I can't get to talk to the person that I need to, but actually now with this opportunity I now can. I can have those conversations. People pick up the phone to me that ghosted me before, and it's quite funny now to be able to say, actually, I've been asking this for a long time. Now we're in a position that you have to do that. So whilst there's always more days in the week and we could do more, we would love to do more, but at the minute, it is a balancing act, but it's something that the Mayor said he will review down the line. So that is our status.
And it sounds like, because the other sort of related question was about what's your place in the governance model, I guess, summarising the question. So do you have a formal place in governance, like signing off things, or does your, I guess, authority come more from being the Mayor's advisors and how you, the mandate that gives you, or something else?
For me, there isn't a formal line of control and command, but the relationships we've built with officers, actually, they always consult with us on important documents or decisions before they go to our governance models or our boards. They always want to make sure that we're happy with what's been put forward, and they take on board all of the comments that we put through to them. So in that respect, whilst it's not mandated, it's actually working really nicely with officers at the minute.
Yeah, I just I second what Beccy said in terms of the fact that this is a passion project for both of us. We are not in it for the money or the recognition. We're both in it because we care deeply about these things. And also what she said about the kind of soft power elements of it, in that where getting in touch with someone and making an ask and making a point might have been a much more laborious process before. We do at least have an email account that seems to provoke more immediate answers if we need them, and we also have the Mayor who we can lean on, and I have leaned on when I've been ghosted by politicians, and they've come back with very quick replies after he's got on their case. So it's there are tools to this job that wouldn't be available from a campaigning perspective or from a third party perspective, and I think that's what's appealed to both of us about what we're doing. I think that when these roles were convened, there was a huge amount of very justified criticism about the fact that they were taking a 3-day role and replacing it with 2 one-day roles, and it felt like a watering down. I think all of that was truly legitimate, and it may be that there are certain, in terms of the governance powers, that may have been kind of eroded in that process. And there are points to be made about that. But once those roles were calcified, I thought it was important to take that opportunity to turn the dial as much as we could. We've just got to use the tools that are at our disposal, and that's why we've talked about the opportunities that we have and the mechanisms that we have to change things. And we are there to give it everything we've got and to put our shoulder to the wheel and to move that dial. We will, in those discussions, try to get more resources and more tools, and we will always be pushing to have more power and more leverage, because we fundamentally believe in the end result. But having now worked with the Mayor, I do sincerely believe that he is invested in these outcomes as well, and wants to see us succeed, and wants to see the same objectives that we've been talking about for so long come to fruition. So
Thanks
no
for
civil rights
taking thanks for taking that one. I think good to put that on the record. I've got a few further ones for you, Matt, on sort of road safety stuff. So I might bundle them up if that's all right. So it was interesting hearing you talk about how much, and obviously Beccy also saying it was really useful to have a kind of road safety commissioner who can do this, but sounds like a lot of your work is directly with the police. So it'd be good to know perhaps, how easy or otherwise that has been. A specific question related to that is West Midlands Police and Operations SNAP. Joe in the Q&A said he stopped submitting due to the decision for no feedback to be given on submissions. And is it possible for that to be reviewed in West Midlands, or indeed for there to be national guidelines on that? It's definitely a discussion point in Greater Manchester. And the third one is, you mentioned the National Road Safety Strategy and that you had some input. I just wondered if you would speak about kind of what were the key topics that you fed into that. So those are three questions: how you're working with the police, OpSnap, and National Road Safety Strategy. What were your priorities that you fed in?
Sure. I mean, just before I get labelled as the police guy, I'm an urbanist at heart. I'm an active travel enthusiast at heart. I don't believe that enforcement is the sole route towards creating safer streets and better communities. I think it's one tool in the box, and I think I appreciate there's a diversity of opinion about the police, and the police come with all kinds of other societal baggage that might not appeal to many people on the call. I fully appreciate where everyone is coming from with respect to that. I don't just work with the police, although obviously liaising with the Police and Crime Commissioner is a big part of the job. Picking up specifically on the issue about OpSnap, Joe, I completely feel your pain as someone who submits to OpSnap myself and doesn't get any feedback. I've had the immense privilege of working with several very clever and clued up people in Better Streets for Birmingham who have taken this issue on. And I've been able to facilitate a meeting with the OpSnap team, between them, who are regular kind of super users of the service, and the OpSnap team. It hasn't quite gone the way that we wanted it to in terms of our initial foray, but it's not an issue that I'm letting go, because the latest stats from OpSnap are somewhat disappointing. There's a bit of a tail off in the percentages of submissions that they are following through, and I sincerely believe that they should be offering feedback as well. So this is an ongoing issue. I am very much fighting the corner in that regard, and trying to do everything I can to get the police to see a bit of reason on this, and to try to appreciate it from the point of view of those who are expending their time and effort submitting these essentially these crimes for their consideration. Better Streets of Birmingham have been fantastic on this. They've looked into the evidence. They provided a lot of background and guidance, and information that's really pertinent to those discussions. So I want to pay them credit in that as well. The last bit was
road safety strategy. What have
road
you
safety strategy.
mentioned? What are your priorities?
What I want to see from the road safety strategy broadly, there are so many specific things that you could get into in terms of detail here, but what I would like to see nationally is an arm's length body that looks at evidence on road safety and guides policy and guides investment in a similar way to what exists in healthcare in terms of the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, whereby we have a body of experts that looks at the most up-to-date evidence and provides guidance on how healthcare should be managed. Now, no politician would come into a hospital and tell us how to prescribe medicines. And no politician should really be coming along and telling engineers what speed limits to set a road at, or how to build infrastructure, because that is an evidence-based consideration. And the fact that all of these things have become so embroiled in the culture wars has massively slowed us down in terms of improving our neighborhoods, in terms of preventing people being killed or seriously injured on our roads. So I want to see road safety as a consideration in its own right removed from the political sphere as much as is possible, because everyone agrees that the road should be safer. And if the evidence points towards one intervention or another to achieve that objective, then there shouldn't really be that much of a political discussion about it. And I think that creating that more evidence-based approach to what we do on our roads will embolden our politicians to carry out the changes that we need to see. Because, you know, if they have a panel of experts looking at everything and coming out with evidence-based guidance that is accessible to the public, then it becomes really, really hard for them to say no to that, and it becomes really hard for other people to refute the legitimacy of those types of interventions. So obviously, big trigger points like 20 miles an hour are one thing, but there are so many different facets of these questions that you could look at in more detail, and also that body could then point us towards where there are gaps in our understanding of what the evidence is. Do you know what I mean? This could be a point of liaison with lots of great academic work that's going on around the country, to sort of funnel that research into different areas and to get the best possible understanding that we can have in terms of how we make our roads safer. So an evidence-based approach, an arm's length body, and also the other thing that I've said quite clearly is this needs dedicated funding. It's all very well, you know, making lots of policy pronouncements, but if we want to reverse the impact that billions and billions and billions of pounds of spending on roads has calcified into our communities and the danger that that's brought, then we are going to need to spend money to undo that, because it's, you know, it's cost a lot to make the mistake, so it's going to cost something to unmake it. But as Beccy said, £444 million a year is what it costs in the West Midlands for us to keep killing people and keep seriously injuring people. So, you know, I'd much rather spend that on safer crossings and mobility lanes and trees and benches for our neighbourhoods, to be honest.
Thank you, Matt. And yeah, that's interesting that, you know, 20 mile an hour speed limits are treated as a political decision in some places. It's a really good point, well made. I'll do the same with you, Beccy, and maybe just package up like a few points from the Q&A, and I'll remind you of them if I need to. But the first one is a question about how advanced are your CA's plan, your combined authorities plans for CRSTS2, and how are locations being chosen for schemes, and how are communities being consulted? So that's one question, I guess. Yeah, how decisions being made about CRSTS2, and where that's being prioritised. Second question, and I think you touched on this in your talk, so maybe you could. The question is, how do you see the pace of delivery of active travel in the West Midlands region? I think you've said quite clearly it's not quick enough, so maybe you could talk more about what you see as the key to speeding that up. And I think that relates to the third point, which was we had Adam Tranter on here when he was the Active Travel Commissioner, as Tim has pointed out in the Q&A, and he spoke a lot about the red tape that you've both identified, and some of that coming from the need for business cases. And are you able to say anything about if that's changing at all? So those are the questions. Yeah, CRSTS2, allocation, prioritisation, pace of delivery on active travel, and red tape.
Yep. So currently we've got a pipeline of schemes, either that had started to be developed or we've asked local authorities to put through. We have a really comprehensive review panel. Again, probably causes some of the delays. So we are looking at how we can simplify that. But there are calls for our future pipeline. What we really want to do is have a really nice big batch of schemes, all designed and ready to go, have gone through the business case, so that we're not constantly chasing our tail. So at the minute, we're so slow on the governance that we're continually having to ask for extensions in terms of the funding spends. So what the team are working really hard to make sure we've got that pipeline in place, and so we can try and turn schemes around, ideally within 2 years. I would love it to be faster. If I've got the pipeline and all the governance done in batches, actually that's more achievable. But there is lots of work going in at the Combined Authority to speed up our business planning, governance processes. The challenge is always, because we are the holders of funds, we have our own governance model, and then each local authority has their own governance model that they have to go through. We're trying to make the case that at least the business case documents should be the same, so that we're not paying consultants to do 2 lots of documents in 2 different templates, because that's a huge waste of money. Governance is really important. We need to make sure public money is spent in the right way, but I do feel that there are simplifications that can be made to the process in order to speed that up. So we've talked to Manchester. Conversations have been going for about 12 months, and I believe our officers have shared, kind enough to share some documentation in terms of their legal contract system, and we're looking at how we implement that. And I'm quite keen to lean into other combined authorities and say, if someone else is doing it better, let's not try and reinvent the wheel. Let's share best practice and use them as our evidence case to say they're doing it here, so there's no reason why we can't do it there. So our team have very strict deadlines now from Active Travel England. We've been measured on it as part of our capability rating to speed up that delivery, and I'm quite confident that we can improve in the next 12 months on that. Business case speed, again, it is down to multiple signatures needed, getting through our assurance framework, but the team have been working really hard to simplify that. And again, I'm pretty confident that we will be able to speed up delivery in the next 12 months. But it's not easy. No governance model is in any local authority.
Thank you, Becky. Right, and I think what I'll do is go through the remaining questions, and if one of you takes one of them, and also if you feel free to give a relatively short answer, and we'll just move on to the next one. So I think this first one's maybe just a question about kind of what's the West Mid's position on cycle hire and e-scooters. I think you said you were procuring. So do you see that as a key tool in your box? Can you give any more on that?
Yep, so our tender's gone out. Our current provider's been extended for 6 months while we do the procurement exercise. We have taken the difficult decision to move away from our own cycle hire scheme, because the amount of investment that is required to electrify our whole fleet, we've currently got about 1,200 bikes in the fleet, 200 of them are electric bikes, and the electric bikes are all out all the time. And so for us to have the investment to electrify the whole fleet, it's just not within the means possible. And I don't want that to hold up the accessibility for people to be able to access more e-bikes. So our tender will be a controlled contract, but with a completely private operator that will bring the fleet with them. But we will have a mixed model of docking-based systems for e-scooters and bikes within heavy footfall areas. So it's sort of a mixed model. Whilst we won't control it, part of the contract is very much heavily focused on managing the conflicts.
Thank you.
We had some good
Matt,
news.
Matt.
We passed a milestone
Sorry.
on that in the last few weeks, where we had our millionth ride, didn't we, Becky?
Yes.
On
Brilliant.
the bike. So
Related question, which might be one for Matt, I'm not sure, but it is about are you doing anything about the issues caused by I guess rogue delivery riders using illegal stroke fake e-bikes? Obviously we know it's a complicated issue with a lot of those workers being amongst our lowest paid, and you know, they have their, you know, they need sort of sympathy and support as well. But is that an issue you're looking at, and are you tackling in any way?
yeah, so I think yeah, obviously this is an issue that probably crosses our domains. So the problems you've identified are very pertinent in that these are often very underpaid people. They are often from BAME backgrounds, and often the bikes they have are the only tool at their disposal to make any income whatsoever in the really kind of precarious existences that they have. However, it is also true that e-mopeds, if we're going to be technical about it, are a danger, particularly in shared spaces, to pedestrians. It does constitute antisocial behaviour to be riding something powerful at 30, 40 miles an hour in shared space. Obviously, Birmingham City Council, along with various other councils, tried to put in PSPOs, which sort of forbade cycling in what were mixed use areas. And I think that was completely the wrong way to go about it. And there was some very spirited campaigning on that issue, again, from Better Streets for Birmingham to get that one kind of kicked out of consideration, which I thought was a very good idea. The police are undertaking operations on illegal e-bikes, and I guess my role and probably Beccy's role. Beccy's more across the work we're doing on things like the food delivery charter, which engages with people on who are working for delivery and Just Eat and companies like that. But I guess our role is to soften that and to introduce a bit of carrot to the stick, and to ensure that when we are going out and when police are undertaking actions like that, we are also kind of engaging with people who may have inadvertently got an illegal bike, or who may need help with the mechanics of their e-bike, or understanding how to use an e-bike safely, how to store batteries safely, etc., etc. So it's to go out and not just clobber people who might have modified e-bikes. It's also to engage with people who do need to use e-bikes for work and ensure they're doing so in as safe and responsible a way as possible, and to try to do what we can to give them the resources to make their lives a bit easier, as well as just the kind of police approach of pulling people off the street and looking at their bike and seizing it off them, and all the rest of it, which probably generates good headlines in a fairly contentious area in some respects. But I don't think that approach needs to be softened, and we need a more kind of conciliatory way of addressing the issue, that includes people who also need to use these technologies. So I think that's probably where we fit into that equation.
Thank you. Right, I'm just going to keep going. Cycle stands, cycle storage, is that on your list of priorities between you? Is there any funding going towards introducing cycle hangers on streets, or increasing kind of cycle storage provision? Quick one on that.
Yeah, so it's in the pipeline of works for the business plan for next year. And then I try to encourage local authorities to think about it within their allocation that they draw down from us. I'd love to see more cycle hangers. We don't have any in the West Midlands. I'm fighting the corner to get the first one in Birmingham City Centre. We've got people from our Hippodrome Theatre and our Royal Ballet using e-bikes to get to work, which is fantastic, but there is absolutely nowhere safe for them to secure them. And understandably, they can't take them inside because they need the space for access. So, that is one of my key priorities. I need to get some more secure cycle parking. Otherwise, people will just continue to cycle for leisure and not for transport. So it is really important that we get that one nailed.
I think as well, in terms of what we want to do per the Kids Streets project, these are exactly the sort of modifications that we would like to introduce as part of healthy streets uplifts. Packages of place-based interventions that start with children and start with the safety outside of a school, but spread out into the community to make those to make sustainable travel more accessible, and to make them more pleasant and easier to get around for the community. So they definitely feature in what we'd like to deliver more broadly, as well as the specific stuff that Beccy's doing so well with.
Thank you. And I'm cantering through this. If you are able to stay on for a couple more minutes after 6:15, then I'll keep going. Next question was the pavement parking. You mentioned as part of the Mayor's Transport Task Force, which is one of the important groups that you sit on, that there was some work looking at a pavement parking trail. Could you speak a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So what we're aiming to do in terms of pavement parking is set up a citizens engagement exercise across 2 communities in the West Midlands, where we go out and essentially talk to people in some detail, have a full almost kind of citizens panel, citizens assembly type interaction, where we select people to be as representative of their area as possible. We pay them for their time. We listen to the issues that they're going to bring to us in terms of how pavement parking as a problem affects their lives. We bring them any kind of experts or evidence that they want to interrogate in terms of how best to tackle the issue. And then we pilot whatever interventions they come back to us with that they'd like to see. So it's essentially two small areas where we're hoping to identify that not only is there likely to be quite a popular support when you consider the matter in detail for tackling pavement parking, but that also people in their own communities will have their own kind of innovative ways that they want to tackle it. We want to use these exercises essentially to persuade government to get off their arse with the pavement parking consultation from 2020, which is still being kicked into the long grass by the Labour government at the moment. By exemplifying that, people want something done, and also that there are things that you can do to stop it. Obviously, there's a huge amount of work that's gone on in Edinburgh with this, and I was in Edinburgh just a couple of months ago, and it's fantastic. There is no one parked on the pavement. In the residential streets, the fact that cars are parked on the road actually slows down the other traffic. It has all kinds of benefits, and it just makes it a far more pleasant place in terms of pedestrian experience. So we really want to capture that in a really detailed democratic exercise of engagement with a couple of communities across the West Midlands. We're currently drafting strategic outline business cases to get the funding for that, and it's going to be a kind of revenue academic exercise to begin with that will then turn into a couple of piloted interventions. The time frame for the whole exercise is probably between 12 and 18 months. So it is a long time, but we've been waiting for 5 years for anything to be done about pavement parking. There's every chance we'll still be waiting in 18 months. So we really want to kind of exemplify what we can achieve as a region with pavement parking, and hopefully give the government a bit of a kick up the pants at the same time.
Thank you, Matt. And are you both okay just to carry on for a couple more minutes? If we do that, brilliant. There's 3 questions related to cameras. So again, I mean, this may not be kind of directly your remits, but I'll sum up the questions. One is, are you pushing ahead with any plans for average speed cameras in the 20-mile-an-hour areas? And related to that, who pays to maintain the new cameras? Secondly, do you feel you need additional defences on cameras given the ULEZ vigilantes in London? And thirdly, there was a question about cameras, which I can't find now. How accurate have you found the near miss cameras? 3 questions. Who fancies those?
Yeah, sure. So average speed enforcement cameras, it's complicated is the short answer to how they're funded. The police are giving a pot of money to the local authorities for the maintenance and upkeep of the cameras. So that the local authorities own the assets, and they are responsible for maintaining them. But the police pay a certain amount of money into the pot from which they derive that funding. So they will still operate at a loss. And this is all within this context. The Police and Crime Commissioner has reiterated his call, which lots of us have co-signed, for the revenue from speeding fines to be retained locally, which currently it just goes to the Treasury and sits in the black hole. So as a region, we're £2.2 million a year down just by putting speed enforcement up, and the more speed enforcement we put up, the further down we'll go, which is obviously perverse to anyone with a sense of propriety. So I can't remember off the top of my head the specific amount the police pay. The police pay some money, the local authorities shoulder the burden, And then the police are responsible for prosecuting a certain number of offences, and they have massively stepped up their work on that by the thousands. In fact, like every month, they're prosecuting several thousand more than they were previously. In terms of the red light cameras, in terms of the joint working agreement, there is some scope for us as the combined authority or the police themselves to install cameras as well. The only problem is then, because the local authorities are the highway authorities, they become responsible for the maintenance of the asset. So that's where it all gets a little bit complicated. So with the red light program that we're currently running, I'm essentially looking for money from the CA to put red light cameras up. Some of the hesitancy over that is from local authorities who are aware that, once we build a shiny new camera, they will then have to maintain it in the years to come. Can you please remind me of that? So 20 mile an hour, no, essentially no is the answer to that. From a logistical point of view, average speed enforcement cameras have to clip off every exit and entry point from a geographical location where they're measuring speed. That kind of thing is really, really hard to achieve in 20 mile an hour zones. And while I would love to see enforcement in 20 mile an hour zones, it's essentially not practicable in terms of the amount of resource that you'd need to achieve it. And by taking the limited resource we have and applying it to roads which are higher speed, where the velocity of collisions is going to be higher and the chance of death or serious injury is higher as a consequence, we will probably do more to save lives and prevent serious injuries on the road network by taking that approach, much as I would love 20 mile an hour to be universally enforced. And the last question was about AI, wasn't it? It's an interesting question. I don't know how we would compare it to anything else, is the honest answer to that. So it's the technology measures near misses because it measures the proximity of two objects traveling, and it measures their speed and their path. And then it does some sort of clever algorithmic thing where it identifies something as a near miss or not. I'm not sure how you'd benchmark that and test it against anything else. So certainly a question for me to ponder and perhaps raise with our Viva City technicians, who will definitely know more than I do about that.
Brilliant answers, Matt. So good to get into the real detail here. I do think I better wrap up though, because we've definitely squeezed extra 5 minutes out of you both. So I thought I'd end with this question from Beth, which I'll kind of just slightly build on as well, which her question was, clearly a great amount of political will to make progress. When you've come up against resistance, how has this been managed? And maybe if you could, finish with your closing thoughts on kind of how, in the context of the kind of the priorities that you've set out that you want to achieve in the future, which you shared with us earlier. What do you see as the kind of key challenges to make those things happen? Hope that makes sense.
So in terms of political support and anti-active travel, I always find the easiest way to get a point across is from the people's view themselves. So what I try to do is take a politician out to meet some of the local people, talk to the parents that can't cross safely and won't allow their kids to walk themselves, so they stick them in a car. Talk to the cyclist that is scared out of their wits' end because the driver behaviour is so poor that they're considering not riding a bike anymore. And for me, tell the stories of the people that this is affecting. There's plenty of people out there that want to walk and cycle more, but they're scared for their safety. And it's those stories that I have to try and amplify and get into the ears of the politicians that aren't backing this. The reason that the Kid Street approach has been one of our priorities is because it's very difficult for a politician to say, I don't agree with children getting to school safely. There is no one that's not going to vote against children's safety and children not being killed, just trying to get to school. And so that is one of our key messages. Tell people stories, tell what the impact will be. This isn't about a numbers game. This is about humans getting from A to B in the way that they want to. That's the most healthy. The evidence is overwhelming on why we should be supporting this. So I always try and do it in stories and try and win hearts and minds that way, rather than use the old political tactics. But it does help when we get Mayor Parker to call them up and say, look, you need to get behind this because it's something I really want to happen. That does help us out a lot.
Brilliant. And anything to add, Matt, on, kind of maybe key challenges for the road ahead and how you're setting about achieving your goals?
Yeah, I think what Beccy said is really poignant. Actually, this is about people, and often it's about people who've suffered the most unimaginable losses, and often those people want nothing more than to share their stories and relate their experience to those in power, so that no one else has to go through what they've gone through. And the strength that families who've suffered these kind of losses show in these situations never ceases to amaze me. So I mean, for me, it's been a privilege to work with a lot of these families and to do everything I can to bring their voice and their stories to the table, because again, as I was saying before, these should not be political issues. These, as Becky's saying, no one wants their children to be unsafe on the way to school. No one wants to see their teenage kid killed. No one wants that knock on the door at 2 a.m. from a police officer that will change your life forever. And the more we can make people understand that, the less of a political question this becomes, and the more we can create a consensus around it. Because it doesn't really matter what stripe of party is in power. If we can convey the real human cost of failing to act here and the real human benefits of delivering the change that we need to see, then that is half the battle. And the other half's, wading through the kind of Kafkaesque bureaucracy. But we'll we'll keep deploying the machete of change in the pondweeds process for that one.
Well, and more power to both of your elbows on that. And thank you so much for coming on. And it's been a fantastic session. Loads of appreciation for you in the chat. And thank you for sharing your contact details, Beccy. And I'm sure people will want to follow up with you. It's been brilliant to hear some real interesting detail on how you're approaching things and what you've managed in 6 months. And good luck with what the challenges are that you've set out, and I'm sure lots of people here will be keen to work with you on helping achieve those things. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've put an email in the chat as well. So please feel free to reach out to me. There's some interesting chat about AI cameras and stuff. But anyone who wants to get in touch, please drop me a line as well.
Right. So thanks everyone. That ends Active Travel Cafe for this week. That extra bonus minutes with Matt and Beccy. Next week we're hearing from a group in Manchester called the Joyriders. I think they have groups all over the country. Interesting to talk about how to enable more people to get into cycling, and Joyriders is a group that does that. And we'll also be hearing from Ranty Highwomen, aka Mark Philpott, and his take on the good, bad, and the ugly, and whatever infrastructure he wants to put in the spotlight next week. So thanks again, everyone, and thanks again to Matt and Beccy.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks very much, everyone.